Let's take a look at the scoring guide. So the scoring guide says 1 point is earned for listing relevant equipment that matches the measured quantities. So what they're looking for there, that whenever we have a quantity, the device, the equipment, is appropriate for that. So if any of them is incorrect, we wouldn't get that point. For measuring the mass of both X and Y with an appropriate measuring device. We have that. Now I put an asterisk there for that before in the table. And the reason for that is there is no reason that we need to collect the mass. We are actually measuring VS and we are measuring HX. So there is no need for us to measure the mass at all. And so this is an error on the part of the AP. Scientifically, we don't need to do that. It is not wrong for us to include this, and virtually everyone did include this, but it's not necessary for achieving this, measuring the mass and why. But they allotted a point for it in any case. Point for measuring the vertical release height with a measuring device, and of course we did that with the ruler. Measuring the speed of the two after the collision, an appropriate measuring device. All right, so, and we spoke about the position, photo gate, by placing it ahead of its path. Point for earning attempting to reduce uncertainty. Multiple trials, and that's what we had for each of these. We measured the height 5 times. We measured the velocity 5 times. And so that's what we had with trials. And it says with one of the parameters varied. And that's the 5 data points. Now, one of the problems with the AP is that they are vague when it comes to trials. They use the word trials when they mean 2 completely different things. And so they're not being sufficiently precise. Trials are trials. And that is, we repeat the exact same thing. What this does is it allows us to find a mean and the standard deviation, so we can find the upper limit and lower limit. That is what trials are, and that's the purpose of trials. Cases are when we change the independent variable. And that is so that we can produce multiple points for graphical analysis. So doing trials, all trials will do is get you a mean with the upper and lower limit. That's what trials are. Cases are the different independent values that we get. And so we need both. And so the way that we use trials, we reduce uncertainty, is by thinking of everything having a plus or minus. The height, plus or minus. The velocity, plus or minus. We ran it 5 times, got the velocity 5 times. We have a mean and uncertainty. And we did that again with the mass, even though it's irrelevant to this particular experiment. We did that. Now, what we also did was we changed the height and then did that same thing again with 5 trials and 5 trials and 5 trials, or more trials. And we might have more than 5 points as well. The more points we have, the easier it is to specify the relationship. The more trials we have for each one, the smaller the standard deviation becomes. And so this is always true. As n increases, that's the number of trials, standard deviation decreases. And so that's how we get our 5 points. And one other thing I want to say about this uncertainty question, whenever there's this question where you're asked to design an experiment, there is always 1 point allotted to that. It's always at least 1 point allotted to it. So this is a way to guarantee one of the 5 points on this design. Whatever you're doing, make sure you're doing multiple trials and multiple cases. All right? And just keep in mind that when the AP uses the word trials, they're really talking about 2 completely separate things. And we've seen this in Pivot, where they talk about trial 1 and trial 2, and what they've done is change the mass. Well, those aren't trials, those are cases. And it just so happens in Pivot, since it's a video analysis, we wouldn't get different results because it's exactly the same phenomena. There's only one phenomenon. There's just different cases of people measuring it. So that's how we would approach this design part of this question.